I'm Lauren Whitaker, 22, and literally last weekend my dream of holding our family together imploded when Mom's secret spilled at Sunday dinner. The one evening I'd worked so hard to keep conflict-free. You know how there's always that person in a family, the peacemaker, the fixer, the invisible glue? Well, that's been my unofficial title since I was old enough to know Mom's tired sigh meant trouble. Or Aunt Jenny's raised eyebrow was just the first volley before a brutal verbal match. It's always been my job to soften blows, smooth edges, and distract everyone from the simmering tension beneath every fake smile and passive-aggressive comment. And honestly, it totally backfired. Sunday dinners at our small house in Willow Creek were legendary for all the wrong reasons. The meals were beautiful, mind you. I made sure of that, crafting each dish meticulously, thus savoring the cooking that filled me with quiet pride. Food was my love language, my silent plea for peace. But this time, the dinner wasn't enough. The truth I'd spent years unconsciously tiptoeing around finally erupted, loud and ugly, shattering every fragile thread I'd carefully woven to keep our messy little family together. It started innocently enough, with Mom's casually biting remark aimed directly at me. "Lauren, isn't it about time you gave up those cooking fantasies and got yourself a real job?" It wasn't new, just another sharp needle thrown into my dreams, but it felt different this time. My heart tightened as my cousins smirked, Uncle Ray chuckled dismissively, and I realized once again how alone I was in my own home. Yet something deep within me wouldn't allow the usual silence. "Actually," I spoke clearly, forcing eye contact with Mom, "I got into the culinary academy. Classes start next week." The room froze. Mom's spoon clattered loudly onto her plate, sending a chill through my veins. I watched, breathless, as disbelief, irritation, and finally anger flickered across her face. Then the explosion came. "You got accepted and didn't think to ask me first?" Mom snapped, her voice shaking with fury. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" The entire family watched, stunned silent, their forks frozen midair. "You've ruined everything!" she practically shouted, her eyes darting around the table, seeking validation from relatives who stared in awkward disbelief. "Do you realize how selfish you're being?" My throat burned with humiliation, but something else surged, an unfamiliar wave of courage. Their judgment hurt, but suddenly it didn't scare me. The cage I'd always allowed myself to be locked inside was crumbling fast, revealing a truth I had ignored far too long. Their rejection hurt, yes, but it ignited a spark within me. A determination stronger than the fear they'd used to control me all my life. Their contempt wouldn't break me, it awakened something deeper, an urge to rewrite the story I'd always passively accepted. So drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, hit subscribe, and stay with me, because this is just the start of the most satisfying revenge you'll ever hear. Looking back, it's almost, you wouldn't believe what I'll do once the whole truth comes out. I didn't become the family outsider overnight. This had been my reality for as long as I could remember. Growing up in Willow Creek, my family defined success in the most painfully traditional way. Good grades, sports trophies, even popularity. These were celebrated, photographed, and proudly displayed like sacred relics. Anything else, especially anything creative or unique, was treated as nothing more than a pointless hobby, a childish phase you'd surely outgrow. But I never outgrew it. Instead, cooking became my refuge. As a little girl, I'd lose myself for hours in Mom's tiny kitchen, inventing recipes, testing flavor combinations, and feeling genuine excitement every time something worked. It was my own private universe, a safe space that no one else seemed interested in exploring, least of all my family. At 13, I entered my first local baking contest. I spent days perfecting a caramel apple pie, balancing sweetness and spice until each bite melted effortlessly in your mouth. Mom didn't come to the contest, of course. She was too busy applauding my cousin Emily's first-place finish in the spelling bee. I placed second, bringing home a small ribbon and an even smaller dose of self-confidence. When I proudly showed it to Mom, her response etched itself into my heart permanently. "Second place?" She'd raised an eyebrow, barely glancing at the ribbon I'd worked so hard for. "Well, maybe next time you'll actually try harder. You can always ask Emily for pointers. She knows how to win." It felt like being punched in the stomach. My throat had tightened with unshed tears, my fingers trembling as I quietly slipped the ribbon into a drawer, hidden away like something shameful. I remember the ache that came from being so easily dismissed, so casually overshadowed. Yet, I never stopped trying, quietly hoping that one day, maybe, they'd finally notice. Years passed, each achievement of mine brushed aside in favor of something more conventional, more easily understood by my family. My cousin Liam made varsity baseball, and the family threw a backyard barbecue in celebration. My homemade graduation dinner went unremarked, eaten in distracted silence. Emily earned a scholarship for science. Mom proudly shared the news with anyone who'd listen. Meanwhile, my quiet acceptance into a culinary internship went unacknowledged, not even deserving of a passing mention. The message was painfully clear. I was invisible. A faint background noise overshadowed by the louder, brighter successes of those who fit neatly into the family mold. Each snub, each silent dismissal chipped away at me slowly, eroding my self-esteem until I began to believe I was truly insignificant. But even then, a stubborn spark refused to die. Every dismissal only sharpened my determination to prove them wrong, to validate my own worth, not through their approval but through my own actions. The kitchen became more than a haven, it became a silent battleground, where I poured every ounce of frustration, sadness, and hope into each new recipe, each dish a small defiant stand against a family who couldn't see me for who I was. So when the acceptance letter from the Culinary Academy finally arrived, it felt more than just validation. It felt like redemption, proof that my dreams were not merely fantasies, but powerful realities. They might have ignored my past, but soon they wouldn't be able to ignore my future. When the letter from Le Cordon Bleu arrived, it felt heavier in my hands than ordinary paper, as if it carried the weight of every tear I'd shed, every silent moment I'd spent doubting myself in that kitchen. The envelope was pristine, elegant even, embossed with a rich blue crest that promised something better, something real, something earned entirely by me. My heart hammered as I slid my finger beneath the flap, carefully pulling out the folded paper. The words, "Congratulations, Lauren Whitaker," danced before my eyes, a validation so powerful my legs nearly gave out. All those years spent secretly saving every penny from my weekend bakery shifts, quietly mastering techniques from old cooking shows at midnight while the house slept. All of it had finally paid off. I sank onto the kitchen floor, clutching the acceptance letter to my chest. Tears spilled down my cheeks, warm and freeing. It wasn't just joy, it was relief, a profound release of years spent carrying the heavy burden of invisibility. My dreams weren't foolish after all, they were possible, they were real. But the elation quickly gave way to fear, my stomach knotting painfully. This was a secret I'd kept hidden for so long, uncertain how Mom would react. Culinary school wasn't cheap, and even though I'd scrimped and saved, my mother had always maintained rigid control over my life. Subtle, but suffocating. Part of me feared her rejection. Part of me was terrified of losing the tiny fragments of approval I still desperately clung to. I folded the letter carefully, hiding it away beneath the loose floorboard under my bed. Night after night, I pulled it out in secret, the creased edges becoming softer with each touch, a reminder of who I truly was. It was my private symbol of hope, a silent promise to myself that I wouldn't settle for the smallness my family assigned me. Every evening became a delicate dance around my secret. Dinner conversations drifted over me, family gossip about cousins' promotions and engagements barely registering as I mentally planned menus, pairing flavors and ingredients, crafting imaginary dishes I couldn't wait to make real. But hiding something this life-changing wasn't easy, especially as the start date for classes drew nearer. Mom grew suspicious, her questions probing deeper into why I hadn't chosen a real job like Emily or Liam. The fear of discovery grew each day, a slow tightening in my chest, but I clung fiercely to my resolve. This was my dream, and for the first time, I wasn't letting their judgment dictate my choices. The letter became more than acceptance. It became my quiet rebellion. Late one night, alone in the dim kitchen, I stood by the stove, simmering berries for a sauce I'd envisioned pairing with a silky vanilla panna cotta. As I stirred, breathing in the sweet aroma, clarity washed over me. This wasn't just about cooking, it was about reclaiming my voice, stepping into the world on my own terms. It was my quiet declaration that I mattered, that my passions and dreams were worthy of recognition, even if I was the only one who believed it. That night, I made a silent promise. No matter how painful the confrontation, no matter the fallout, I'd no longer hide who I was. The next Sunday dinner would be different. I'd share my secret, face their judgment head on, and finally break free from the shadows. Little did I know, my courage would spark an explosion none of us saw coming. The day of the annual family dinner arrived faster than I'd expected, bringing with it a cold knot of dread lodged firmly in my stomach. It felt different this year, heavier somehow. Maybe it was because of my secret acceptance letter, hidden like a ticking clock beneath my bed. Or maybe it was because I knew, deep down, I could no longer stay silent. Whatever the reason, I could barely breathe as I stood in front of the mirror, staring at my reflection and wondering if I was strong enough to face what came next. Mom had been busy all day, bustling around the house, directing me to cook dishes she'd proudly claim credit for later. I sliced vegetables mechanically, my mind far away, replaying every possible reaction she might have once I finally revealed my news. Would she scream? Would she mock me again? Or would it simply be another disappointed sigh, one that cut deeper than any shouted word? The kitchen filled with comforting aromas, but none of them soothed my anxiety. As guests arrived, voices floated in from the dining room. My cousins Emily and Liam, Uncle Ray's booming laughter, Aunt Jenny's high-pitched chatter. Each familiar voice tightened the tension coiling inside me, reminding me how isolated I was among those who should have known me best. And then Ryan walked in. Seeing him brought both warmth and fear. Ryan was different from everyone else. Gentle, perceptive, and someone who saw beyond my family's carefully constructed image. Our friendship had quietly grown into something more, though neither of us had spoken the words aloud. Tonight, he felt like my lifeline, an ally amid a battlefield of judgment. "You okay?" he asked softly, coming up beside me at the kitchen counter. He glanced at my hands, gripping the knife a little too tightly as I chopped carrots. "I don't know," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "Something just feels off tonight." His eyes softened, concern etched deeply across his face. "You don't have to face them alone, you know. I'm here." His words pierced the armor I'd built, nearly bringing tears to my eyes. I nodded silently, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. Ryan gently took the knife from my hand, placing it down and capturing my fingers in his own. "Lauren," he began, voice low, cautious. "Whatever happens tonight, whatever you're afraid of, I've got your back." A wave of emotion surged through me, gratitude and fear mingling painfully. Just as I was about to respond, Mom's voice sliced sharply through the kitchen doorway. "Lauren, dinner isn't going to serve itself. Stop wasting time." I felt Ryan's hand tighten briefly around mine before he stepped away, offering me one last reassuring glance. Drawing a shaky breath, I carried the dishes into the dining room, Wittes forcing a polite smile as I took my seat. The table was pristine, filled with familiar faces and strained smiles. My heart hammered painfully in my chest. As I settled into my chair, the weight of the envelope beneath my mattress seemed suddenly heavier, the secret I'd guarded so fiercely now desperate to break free. The tense conversation buzzed around me, but I could hardly hear it. All I felt was the pulsing urgency inside my chest, the ache to finally step out of my silence, even if it meant shattering everything. Little did I know, the truth wouldn't only shatter my silence, it would break apart everything I'd ever known about my family, about Ryan, and most painfully, about myself. Dinner started exactly as I'd feared. Every dish passed around with empty compliments to Mom, as if I hadn't been the one sweating all afternoon in the kitchen. But tonight, I wasn't focused on who got credit for the food. Instead, I braced myself for what I knew would come. The gauntlet of subtle barbs and sharp-edged questions meant to chip away at my confidence. "So, Lauren," Aunt Jenny began brightly, cutting into the silence like a razor, "still daydreaming about becoming the next big chef, or have you finally gotten realistic?" Laughter rippled around the table, casual but biting. My chest tightened painfully, but I forced a steady smile. "Actually," I responded, lifting my chin just enough to show defiance, "I've already been accepted into Le Cordon Bleu. Classes start next week." The silence that followed was deafening. It felt as if the room itself drew a sharp breath. Mom's face turned rigid, her eyes boring into mine with a fierce, barely contained anger. Emily coughed awkwardly, glancing sideways at Liam, who looked like he'd rather be anywhere but here. Uncle Ray broke the tension with a booming chuckle. Culinary school? Isn't that a fancy way of saying overpriced cooking classes? Guess anyone can waste money nowadays. My cheeks flushed hot, embarrassment and anger burning side by side beneath my skin. I opened my mouth to reply, but Mom cut in before I could speak. It's more than wasteful, she said coldly, her eyes never leaving mine. It's selfish, Lauren. Leaving your family to chase some childish fantasy? After everything we've sacrificed? Her words cut deeply, but something new rose within me, a quiet strength I'd never known I possessed. Selfish? My voice shook slightly, but I held firm. How was wanting to build a real future for myself selfish? Mom's expression hardened further, her voice dropping dangerously low. Because you're turning your back on everything we've built. On me. You mean everything you've built? I shot back, my voice louder now, trembling with barely suppressed anger. You've never once supported me. You've dismissed my dreams for years, and now you're angry because I finally chose something for myself? The table fell silent again, tension so thick it felt suffocating. Mom's hand clenched tightly around her fork, knuckles turning white. You don't understand what you're talking about, Lauren, she hissed. You never have. Before I could reply, she shifted tactics, her eyes narrowing sharply. You think culinary school is your escape? You think you know everything? Then why don't you tell us about Ryan? Did you know your precious boyfriend has been lying to you this whole time? My blood ran ice cold, confusion and dread seizing my heart. What are you talking about? Mom leaned in, each word landing like a devastating blow. Ryan isn't who you think he is. Ask him about his family, ask him why he never mentions his father. My mind spun, panic rising, my vision blurring around the edges. Ryan's face had gone pale, his expression unreadable. Around me, the family watched eagerly, eyes wide, savoring the drama unfolding at my expense. I stood abruptly, chair scraping harshly against the floor. Humiliation, anger, and betrayal swirled inside me, a toxic storm that threatened to consume me. Without another word, I fled the dining room, Mom's bitter revelation chasing after me like a ghost. As I stumbled toward the front porch, desperately fighting tears, I had no idea that the worst was still yet to come. I burst through the screen door onto the porch, gasping for air, the cool evening biting at my tear-streaked cheeks. The world around me blurred, a sickening mix of humiliation and confusion making me dizzy. Behind me, muffled voices rose sharply, tangled arguments that felt distant yet suffocating. Lauren, Ryan's voice was soft behind me, cautious but urgent. Please wait, let me explain. I spun around, heart hammering, betrayal making my voice sharp. Explain what, Ryan? Is it true? Have you been lying to me? His face fell, grief etched deeply into his expression. I wanted to tell you. I swear I did, but I didn't know how. Tell me what? My voice shook, every word aching. Who are you, Ryan? What's going on? His eyes were tormented, filled with a pain so raw it mirrored my own. My dad. He left years ago, Lauren. He had a whole other life, a family he never talked about. I found out last year, but until I met you, I didn't realize exactly who that family was. The realization crept up my spine, ice cold, the puzzle pieces falling together in a devastating arrangement. Are you saying? Ryan stepped forward, anguish clear on his face. Lauren, your dad, he's my father too. The ground beneath me seemed to shift, the weight of his words so crushing I stumbled back. My chest tightened painfully, as if the breath had been stolen straight from my lungs. Everything I thought I knew about my life, about Ryan, shattered in an instant. That's impossible, I whispered, desperate to deny the truth. Mom told me my father died before I was born. I wish it wasn't true. Ryan whispered back, eyes glistening. But my mom finally admitted it. They were together long before he met your mom. When your mom got pregnant, everything fell apart. He chose to disappear rather than deal with the fallout. I didn't know how to tell you, Lauren. I didn't want to lose you. His words tore through me. Each revelation, more devastating than the last. Mom's bitter anger suddenly made sense. Her resentment, a dark, hidden wound she'd carried for years. The secret she'd guarded so fiercely had finally ripped open, bleeding pain onto all of us. The screen door slammed open again, Mom appearing on the porch, her expression bitter and cold. There you go, Lauren, happy now? You forced this secret out into the open. Now live with it. I turned to her, heartbroken and furious. You lied to me. My entire life, everything you've ever told me was built on lies. Her eyes flashed defiantly, though beneath the anger lay something deeper: fear, shame, regret. You have no idea how much I sacrificed, Lauren. Your father destroyed everything. I protected you from that. No, I replied sharply, anger now burning away any lingering fear. You tried to control me. You decided what my truth would be, and you let me suffer in silence for your mistakes. She straightened, her voice icy and final. If you hate this family so much, then leave. You're no longer welcome here. Consider yourself disowned. The cruelty in her words cut deep, but a strange clarity filled me. I looked into her eyes, sadness mixing with newfound strength. Fine, I'll leave. But understand this, you haven't broken me. For the first time in my life, I finally know exactly who I am. Turning away, I walked slowly down the porch steps, Ryan's sorrowful gaze following me, Mom's angry silence heavy at my back. Though the pain threatened to consume me, I knew one thing clearly. Whatever came next, I would face it on my terms. No longer invisible, no longer silent, finally free. I barely made it to the street before the tears blurred my vision, making the familiar neighborhood feel foreign, even hostile. I had just lost everything: my mother, my family, even Ryan, in one painful moment. Each step I took away from the house felt both terrifying and liberating, but mostly it just hurt. It hurt so deeply, I thought I might crumble right there on the sidewalk. I sank onto the curb, breathing hard, my chest aching. The streetlights flickered overhead, casting long shadows, echoing my loneliness. The betrayal was suffocating, like a heavy weight pressing relentlessly against my heart. But beneath the shock and despair something else simmered quietly: resolve, determination, a sense of myself I'd never fully known until now. My phone buzzed sharply, jolting me from the swirl of my thoughts. Wiping my tears roughly, I stared at the screen. It was an unknown number, and for a moment I hesitated, half expecting another blow, more bad news. Hello? My voice came out raw, shaky. Lauren Whitaker? A kind, gentle voice asked on the other end. This is Margot Evans, Director of Admissions at Le Cordon Bleu. My breath caught, confusion mixing with hope. Yes, speaking. I apologize for calling at this hour, she continued warmly, but I wanted to deliver this news personally. Your scholarship application was reviewed by our committee today. Lauren, I'm delighted to inform you that you've been awarded our full excellence scholarship. Tuition, housing, everything, you're fully covered. The phone nearly slipped from my trembling hand. My head spun, this sudden gift of good news, so unexpected, so perfectly timed it felt surreal. The moment Margot's words sank in, fresh tears began to spill down my face, this time from overwhelming relief and gratitude. Are you serious? I whispered, my voice breaking, emotion flooding every word. Very serious, she affirmed gently. Your story, your determination, it touched all of us deeply. You've earned this, Lauren. We believe in you. I clutched the phone tightly, struggling to find words to express how much her kindness meant. Thank you, I managed softly. Thank you so much. As I hung up, a wave of fierce clarity surged through me, washing away some of the pain from earlier. The timing wasn't coincidence. It felt like destiny. At my lowest moment, when everything had fallen apart, the universe had quietly given me a lifeline, something solid to cling to. Footsteps echoed softly on the pavement behind me, cautious and familiar. I turned slowly to see Ryan approaching, his eyes shadowed by guilt and sorrow. He stopped a few feet away, hands shoved nervously into his pockets. Lauren, please, he began quietly. I'm so sorry. I didn't want you to find out like this. I studied his face, the sincerity and pain in his expression. He'd hurt me, but he was hurting too. Something inside me softened just slightly. I know, I whispered gently, holding his gaze. It's not your fault, none of this is. His shoulders sagged in relief, eyes glistening. I never wanted to lose you, he said quietly. You haven't, I admitted honestly. But I need time, Ryan. Everything's changed. I have to figure out who I am now, without secrets, without lies. He nodded slowly, understanding dawning softly in his eyes. I get it, just know I'll be here, whenever you're ready. As he walked away, I sat alone beneath the flickering streetlights, holding on to the news of my scholarship like a beacon of hope. Tonight had changed everything. But for the first time I felt strong enough to face whatever came next. In the days following that devastating dinner, whispers spread through Willow Creek, faster than wildfire. My mother's betrayal, Ryan's revelation, my sudden departure, all of it became fuel for endless gossip. For once, though, the chatter didn't sting. I had something they'd never expected me to have: confidence rooted in truth. Mom tried calling repeatedly, her messages a mix of anger, guilt, and thinly veiled apologies, but I ignored them all. I needed space to process the avalanche of secrets that had reshaped my reality overnight. Most importantly, I needed to reclaim control over my own life. Then came another Sunday. The first one I'd ever purposely skipped dinner. Instead, I spent that afternoon packing my bags, excitement and anxiety tangling inside me as I prepared for culinary school. Every folded shirt, every carefully chosen kitchen tool felt symbolic, reminders of who I was and who I was becoming. But before I could truly leave Willow Creek behind, I knew I had one last piece of unfinished business to address. Confronting my family head-on, refusing to let their narrative define me anymore. When I arrived at the house, the familiar knot tightened sharply in my chest. Stepping inside felt surreal, memories pressing in from every corner. The dining room, usually alive with superficial laughter, was somber, tense. Mom sat rigidly at the table, eyes wide in surprise. Emily, Liam, Aunt Jenny, and Uncle Ray stared openly, their gazes filled with curiosity and judgment. "Lauren," Mom said quietly, standing abruptly. "You came back. Just to say goodbye," I replied calmly, meeting her gaze directly, and to set a few things straight. The family watched intently, each holding their breath. My heart hammered painfully, but beneath my anxiety, a surprising strength carried me forward. "For years, I've been your invisible daughter," I began steadily, my voice clear despite the shaking in my hands. "I tried everything to gain your approval, sacrificing myself to fit your mold. But no matter what I did, it was never enough." Mom opened her mouth to protest, but I held up a hand sharply, silencing her. "No. You've had your chance to speak," I continued, emotion threading tightly through my words. "You lied to me my whole life, Mom, and when the truth finally came out, you chose pride and anger over honesty. I refused to carry your secrets or your shame any longer." The room went quiet, the silence heavy and charged. Mom looked away, jaw tight with a mixture of embarrassment and resentment. I turned toward my cousins, who shifted awkwardly in their seats, clearly uncomfortable. "And as for all of you, your whispers, your dismissals, your casual cruelty, I don't need your approval anymore. I know exactly who I am, and no amount of judgment will ever change that." Uncle Ray cleared his throat awkwardly, gaze fixed firmly on the table. Aunt Jenny simply stared, mouth parted in stunned silence. Mom's eyes glistened slightly, pride and shame battling within them. I took one final breath, steadying myself. From now on, I define my own story. I choose my own path, and if that means leaving you behind to live authentically, then so be it. Without waiting for their responses, I turned and walked steadily toward the door, the weight of a lifetime's worth of pain falling from my shoulders. The front door swung open smoothly beneath my hand, the afternoon sunlight streaming warmly across my face. For the first time, stepping outside felt like liberation rather than loss. As the door closed firmly behind me, I knew I was leaving behind more than just a family. I was leaving behind the version of myself they'd created, reclaiming my own voice, my own truth, and finally my freedom. When I finally arrived at the small cafe near the edge of town, where Ryan had asked me to meet him before I left for culinary school, nervous anticipation thrummed beneath my skin. My confrontation with my family still echoed in my heart, raw yet liberating, but seeing Ryan again carried a different kind of weight. I didn't know if our relationship could survive such complicated truths, but I needed to find out. Inside, the cafe buzzed gently with warm chatter, soft laughter drifting between tables. Ryan sat by the window, fingers drumming lightly against his coffee cup. His eyes lifted the moment I stepped through the door, relief washing visibly over his face. "You came," he murmured softly, standing to greet me. "I said I would," I replied quietly, sliding into the chair across from him. We stared at each other silently for a moment, emotions swirling between us. Uncertainty, hurt, longing, but beneath it all remained a comforting familiarity, something I wasn't quite ready to give up. Ryan took a slow breath, eyes searching mine carefully. "Lauren, I never meant to hurt you. I swear, if I'd known sooner." I held up a gentle hand, stopping him. "I know. You've always been honest with me, even when it hurts. That's more than I can say for most people in my life." His shoulders relaxed slightly, relief softening the edges of his anxiety. He leaned forward, sincerity etched across his face. What do we do now? Everything's so complicated. I sighed, offering a small, fragile smile. Honestly, I don't know, but maybe complicated isn't always bad. Maybe it's what we need to finally figure out who we are. Ryan's eyes brightened, a tentative hope sparking between us. He reached across the table, cautiously taking my hand in his. I don't want to lose you, Lauren. Whatever it takes, whatever you need, just tell me. My heart softened, the ache in my chest easing slightly. Right now, I just need honesty and patience. Can we start there? He squeezed my fingers gently, warmth radiating through his touch. Absolutely. We sat quietly for a few moments, sipping coffee and watching the late afternoon sunlight slant warmly through the windows. The cafe felt safe, insulated from the chaos we'd left behind. Then the bell above the cafe door chimed softly, and I glanced up to see Ryan's mother, Claire, entering hesitantly. Her eyes were gentle, cautious, searching. Seeing her now, knowing what I did about our shared past, felt strange but somehow comforting. Lauren, she said softly as she approached our table, I hope you don't mind. Ryan told me you'd be here, and I thought you deserved the truth from someone who lived it. I stood, meeting her gaze steadily, curious and vulnerable. I'd like that. She drew in a careful breath, eyes filled with quiet regret. Your mother and I, our lives got tangled up by mistakes and secrets we never intended. None of us meant for you to suffer. I want you to know how sorry I am. Her sincerity eased something deeply guarded within me. Thank you for saying that. Claire smiled softly, compassion evident in every line of her face. Family isn't always easy or simple, Lauren, but sometimes the family you choose, the ones who show up even when it's messy, they're the ones who truly matter. Her words settled warmly in my chest, ringing true in ways I'd never fully understood until now. As I looked from Claire to Ryan, their gentle expressions filled me with a sense of belonging I'd craved my entire life. Maybe family wasn't something defined by blood or secrets, but rather the people who held your hand when life got complicated, who stood beside you even in the darkest moments. Sitting here with them, I finally felt the acceptance I'd longed for, chosen freely, openly, honestly. And for the first time, I knew exactly where I belonged. In the weeks that followed, I slowly built a new kind of stability, one based not on family expectation, but on the strength of my own boundaries. Starting culinary school felt like stepping into a fresh world. Each lesson, each new recipe, filled me with an excitement I'd rarely allowed myself to feel before. But the peace wasn't automatic. It was something I actively chose, day by day, moment by moment. Messages from Mom continued to arrive, first angry, then pleading, finally resigned. I read each one carefully but didn't respond. It wasn't out of cruelty or anger, it was simply necessary. Each silent boundary was a brick in the fortress I was building around my newfound self-respect. My small apartment near the academy became a sanctuary. It was modest, barely furnished, but completely mine. Every evening after long, exhausting classes, I'd sink onto my tiny sofa, closing my eyes, breathing deeply as gratitude mixed gently with exhaustion. This space was proof that I could stand alone, strong enough to face my new reality without anyone else's approval. Then, on a crisp autumn morning, a gentle knock came at my door. I opened it slowly, startled to find Mom standing hesitantly on my doorstep, looking smaller, softer somehow than I'd ever seen her. Lauren, she began quietly, eyes downcast, voice unsure. Can we please talk? For a moment I hesitated, tension tightening my shoulders, but something about her quiet vulnerability gave me pause. I nodded, stepping back to let her in. We sat stiffly across from each other, silence heavy, each of us uncertain how to begin. Finally, Mom drew a shaky breath, eyes glistening. I never wanted to hurt you, Lauren, she whispered, pain threading clearly through her voice. Everything I did, every secret I kept, I thought was protecting you. I was wrong, and I'm so sorry. My heart tightened painfully, but I didn't interrupt, letting her words land. I've spent years living in bitterness, blaming everyone but myself for the life I created, she admitted softly, her voice trembling. When you confronted me, when you finally spoke your truth, I realized how wrong I'd been, how much damage I'd done. I don't want to lose you completely. Her honesty surprised me, a raw openness I hadn't expected. I took a deep breath, gathering my own courage. I don't want that either. But things can't go back to how they were. I won't ever be invisible again, Mom. She nodded immediately, understanding flooding her eyes. I know. I don't expect forgiveness right away, or ever maybe, but I want you to know how proud I am of you, Lauren. You've achieved everything despite me, and I finally see that now. Her words settled deep inside my chest, lifting something heavy I'd carried far too long. I appreciate that, I whispered. But I need space to heal. Respecting that boundary is how you can help. Mom's expression softened. Genuine respect reflected in her eyes for perhaps the first time. I promise I'll honor that. When she left, the apartment felt lighter somehow, as if the last shadow had finally lifted. Our relationship wasn't healed, not yet, but clarity had arrived. Boundaries were no longer walls built out of fear. They were careful lines drawn out of self-respect, marking clearly what I would and wouldn't accept. As I stepped back into the kitchen later, my knife slicing confidently through fresh vegetables, warmth filled my chest. The simple act of cooking now symbolized my reclaimed power. Each dish I created a testament to my resilience, each meal a quiet celebration of the boundaries that now protected my peace. For the first time, my heart felt truly free, secure within the fortress I'd built not from bricks but from the gentle strength of self-respect. 2 years later, Willow Creek felt different when I returned, not smaller as people often say, but clearer somehow. I'd graduated with honors, sharpened my culinary skills, and now I stood on Main Street, staring at the building that had once been an old bakery, shuttered for years, and waiting quietly for a new story. This would be my legacy. A cafe built not just on passion and talent, but on healing and forgiveness. I'd debated fiercely about returning here to the place that had once broken me, but somehow it felt necessary. It wasn't about proving anything to my family anymore. It was about reclaiming my story on my own terms. I signed the lease proudly, my hand steady, heart strong. With each stroke of my pen, I felt as though I was rewriting history, transforming pain into purpose. Renovations began immediately, the town buzzing with curiosity. I welcomed every question, every hesitant congratulations, knowing this cafe was more than just a business. It was a chance to rewrite the narrative of my family's name, to replace secrecy and shame with honesty and community. On opening day, the cafe overflowed with customers eager to support the hometown girl who had returned triumphant. Familiar faces filled the tables, neighbors, former classmates, even Aunt Jenny and Uncle Ray, who arrived quietly, watching from afar with an uncertain respect. I greeted them kindly, letting past judgments fade. This cafe was a space of healing after all, not bitterness. Ryan arrived, smiling softly, his presence calming as always. He'd grown stronger too, forging his own identity apart from our tangled family history. Our relationship had settled comfortably into friendship, built firmly on mutual respect and shared resilience. "Look at this place," he said warmly, pride evident in his eyes. "You've truly built something special here, Lauren." "I hope so," I replied softly, emotion catching in my throat as I took in the bustling room. "This isn't just mine, it's for anyone who's ever felt unseen or unworthy. I want this to be a safe place." He squeezed my shoulder gently, understanding in his gaze. "It is, because you made it that way." Later, as the crowd thinned slightly, Mom stepped hesitantly through the door, eyes scanning the space nervously. Our interactions had been sparse since that painful day in my apartment, but slowly, carefully, we'd begun rebuilding trust. She approached me carefully, uncertainty in every step. "Lauren," she began softly, voice tight with emotion, "I'm so proud of what you've done here." I paused, the sincerity in her words settling deep into my heart. "Thank you. It means a lot." She hesitated a moment, then reached gently into her bag, pulling out a worn recipe book, its edges softened from years of use. "This belonged to your grandmother. I've held on to it for years, but it belongs with you. She would have loved this place." I took the book carefully, my fingers trembling slightly. It felt like a bridge, an acknowledgement, a quiet apology, a symbol of the new legacy I was creating. "I'll treasure it," I whispered softly, our eyes meeting in quiet reconciliation. After she left, I stood alone in the cafe's soft evening light, clutching Grandma's recipe book to my chest. In that moment, surrounded by warmth and the gentle hum of community, I finally understood what legacy truly meant. It wasn't just about success, or even about proving myself to others. It was about embracing authenticity, using my journey, painful as it had been, to build something beautiful, lasting, and healing. For the first time, I truly owned my name, reclaimed and rewritten, not by past hurt, but by future hope. Late in the evening, as the last customer slipped into the gentle twilight outside, I sank into a quiet booth near the cafe's window, savoring the peace. Soft laughter and conversations from the street drifted through the open door, wrapping around me like a comforting embrace. I glanced down at my grandmother's recipe book, tracing the worn cover gently with my fingertips. It symbolized so much: the pain of the past, the strength to forgive, and the courage to define my own worth. Flipping through its delicate pages, my heart softened with each familiar, faded handwritten note. My grandmother had faced struggles of her own, quietly persevering in a family that rarely celebrated her strength. Yet she'd found ways to nurture her passion and quietly share her gifts, hidden behind the scenes, much as I had for so many years. But her story wasn't mine, not anymore. Today had shown me clearly how far I'd come. I no longer carried the weight of my family's expectations, or the heavy burden of secrets that weren't mine to keep. Instead, I carried gratitude, pride, and the kind of peace that only came from knowing exactly who I was, separate from anyone else's approval. Ryan appeared at my table, sliding in across from me quietly, his presence grounding as always. "You look happy," he said gently, smiling softly. "I am," I admitted quietly, closing the book with care. "It feels good to finally let go." He nodded thoughtfully, eyes warm with understanding. "It suits you." "Do you ever wonder," I asked softly, looking out at the peaceful street beyond, "if things had been easier, less painful, if we'd still be here now?" He shook his head gently, eyes thoughtful. "Maybe not. Maybe we needed to break first, to figure out how we wanted to rebuild ourselves." His words resonated deeply, perfectly capturing the heart of my journey. It hadn't been easy, or simple, or painless, but it had been necessary. Every struggle had shaped me, every betrayal had tested me, and ultimately, every hardship had led me here, to this moment of quiet, confident peace. I'd spent so many years chasing external validation, desperate for recognition, aching to be seen. But now, sitting in the warmth of the cafe I'd built, holding my grandmother's book, I finally understood the truth I'd always sought. My worth was internal, unshakable, grounded in the choices I made, the boundaries I set, and the love I chose to give freely. Ryan reached gently across the table, taking my hand in a quiet gesture of comfort. "Lauren, you've always been enough. I'm glad you finally see it." Emotion rose softly within me, gratitude filling every corner of my heart. "I do see it now. Clearly." We sat together quietly, watching the night deepen softly outside the cafe window, peace settling comfortably around us. For the first time, the silence didn't feel heavy with unspoken pain. It felt warm, inviting, filled with the quiet confidence of two people who'd finally learned to heal. And as the cafe settled into restful stillness, my heart filled with a quiet promise. A silent, unshakable truth. I'd found peace, not in the approval of others, but in the gentle strength of knowing exactly who I was, completely and unapologetically. Have you ever felt trapped trying to please everyone but yourself? If my journey resonated with you, I'd love to hear your story. Share your experience in the comments. Remember, there's immense strength in choosing your truth, even when it feels impossible. If you connected with what I've shared, please like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who needs to know it's okay to define success on their own terms. Your voice matters, your dreams matter, and you deserve a life filled with authenticity and self-respect. Because ultimately, the most powerful story you'll ever tell is the one you choose for yourself. Thanks for being here. Ask, reflect, share.